Good Tvoch, everybody. We welcome to our Amud Yomi Shir. Actually, it's not Amud Yomi, but I keep saying Amud Yomi. It's not Amud Yomi. We are in a Gemara Shir doing less than an Amud, but a little bit more Bayun. And we're learning about Muktzeh, all kinds of exciting things. We're also going to learn some Tumah V'Tara, but don't run away. Tumah V'Tara is not that hard, and we're going to learn about Tanur, how Tanur, an oven, how does it work with the Tumah V'Tara. And let's just go. Let's go. Let's start. The Shuz Nishmas, my father, Menachem and Akiva, Ruth, Bas Shalom, so Bas Moshe, to the very, very quick release of all the hostages. Kuf Chavdal Damud Beis, Shabbos Kodesh, Omer Videm Shmuel. We are 4 lines from bottom of the page. And just as a reminder, what we saw is very simple. Machlokas that we have to now just, quickly summarize. We saw Machlokas in the Mishnah between Tanakama, which is Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Yehuda. Machlokas is as follows. It could be Nagel Halacha. You have a Kli. On Shabbos, as Shabbos came in, when Shabbos set in, the Kli was a Kli, there was, let's say, a receptacle. It was a container, something that you can put stuff inside. In the middle of Shabbos, it broke. Now, it broke and now became something very interesting. It didn't become a complete nothing. It wasn't smashed into smithereens. On the other hand, it did not maintain its original form, which means that it's broken in such a way that now it can serve as a cover. Beforehand, the purpose was to receive things. Now it cannot receive anything, to accept anything. It can only be used as a cover, to cover pots, pans, whatever. So now that change of use in the middle of Shabbos, do we consider that as nolad or not? That's a question. According to Tanakama, no. As long as the Kli can do any type of malacha, even if the malacha is different to the malacha that was originally designated for, we still say that it's considered to be as a good kli. Not nolad, it was a kli, and now it's weiter, noch a kli. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, more machmir, Rabbi Yehuda says no, it's still considered as muktzeh / noilad, unless it can do the original job, it can do the original idea, it can serve as the original purpose, then it is considered as a kli, not nolad. Then you can say whichever status it had ben hashmoshes is maintained, continues. But if it has a new purpose, then it's not kli anymore. It's nolad. It's quite simple. Of course, there's more to talk about, but let's just continue now. Megufas chovis Megufas chovis is basically the cover, the lid of a barrel. It's a thick lid of a barrel, yeah, and it broke. Nichteto, it broke. Mutter letaltel b'Shabbos. You're allowed to schlep it and carry b'Shabbos that megufa of a kli. Tanina miachi, I'm going to tell you Ritva soon. Ritva. Tanina miachi megufa shenichtata yivishvarea mutter letaltel b'Shabbos. Very nice. So basically, Rav Yehuda b'Shem Shmuel says a megufa of a chovis that broke could be that also. Rashi said shvarea shel chovis. Yeah. Rashi says the broken part of the chovis. The Ritva says even the broken parts of the megufa. Let's say the whole thing broke. I'm going now with the Ritva. Even if the cover broke, yeah, and I can still use the cover piece, meaning the broken piece of the lid of the chovis of the barrel, it's considered as usable, and you can use it on Shabbos. And the Ritva is asking, what's the chiddush? We know it already from before. Why is Rav Yehuda Shmuel support of the Brisa telling me that? Answers the Ritva. One could say that to begin with, a cover is not such a choshev a thing. It's not a star in its own right. It's secondary, auxiliary for something else, for the chavis, right? One would say, listen, the cover of the chavis is such a great shakes to begin with. Now it broke, that's a nothing. Mashmalan, we don't say that. That even the broken piece from the secondary kind of kli, as long as it can be used, and as long as and when Shabbos came in, it was good, then we consider it to be a kli, and it's called a kli. That's a chiddush, and that's a ritva for you. Continues the braysa, ולא יספויס ממנה שבר לחסס בו es hakli ולסמוך בקרא המיתה, which means, לא יספויס means, let's say you take that piece of, by the way, it's a piece of clay, yeah, that's the chovis, whatever it's made out of, actually doesn't make a difference. You take that broken piece. Broken pieces don't tend to look very nice and well organized and smooth. Lo yispois means don't smoothen it. Don't remove all the little protrusions, all the spitzalach. Don't just make it smooth by taking all the little slivers and smoothing it, because that's what says Rashi Makeh bepatish. You're not making a nice, good-looking new kli in the middle of Shabbos. Rashi is Lashitosa. Remember, Rashi says there's no binyan bekelim, there's Makeh bepatish, right? You have a broken, very rough kind of piece, make it smooth. It's considered to be a Makeh bepatish, and therefore don't do that. I mean, you're allowed to use it, but don't do the extra thing. Just remember not to be over on Makeh bepatish in order l'chasas basically to cover the kli, v'lis machbakara amita, or to wedge and support with it the legs of the bed. Let's say the bed is wobbly, you're allowed to use that piece for that, because we paskin, by the way, like Rabbi Meir, that you're allowed to use it for something else. And make sure you don't build it, don't give it a finish on Shabbos Makeh bepatish. And now back to Muktzeh, v'im zolko be'ashpa also. If, and I'm following some of the Rishonim that says, what about if you threw it in the garbage on Shabbos? Yeah, that's what the Rashi, but the Ritva they learn. If you threw it on Shabbos, that piece, if you threw it to the garbage on Shabbos, then you're not allowed to take. By the way, ashpa is not a garbage like our garbage. It doesn't have dirty diapers there. Ashpa is more like where all your odds and ends are, where you probably don't like them, but you may use them again. Yeah, but it's kind of that corner in the storage room. So if you threw it in the ashpa, showing you're not interested in it anymore, then it's also to use it. To use it, even though at the beginning of Shabbos it was usable. Maski for Rav Papa. Rav Papa doesn't like it. Rav Papa is attacking the idea that if you threw it in the ashpa in the middle of Shabbos, it's considered to be already not usable because you diverted your mind from it. You removed your mind from it. But according to this, let's say a person threw his glima on Shabbos, his nice coat, nice, good-looking suit on Shabbos, you threw it to the semi-garbage place, would also be considered as a muktzah. That's what he wants to say. The Ritva asks a question, which I was happy that he's asking, because I think we all ask the question, what's the comparison? We're talking about a broken piece. Big question if I'm interested. So if you throw it in the garbage, you may say, oh, now I showed, yeah, I did the Makeh bepatish the other way to show I'm not interested. But the glima, if you have a nice suit, of course, if you throw it to the garbage, says Ritva, battle that. Right. Okay. So let's continue. We stop it in the Zoom. I'm sorry for the interruption. Right. But okay, let's just again, the question is if a person throws the garment to that area, whatever it's called ashpa is still not a place for a garment to be. That's for sure not. And if you throw it there, of course, that's not considered as mevatel completely. You want to wear it again. But then the question is, how does the Gemara compare that to throwing something which is much less valuable? Says the Ritva, it's not comparable. The Gemara wants to show you how ridiculous your idea is when you go against the concept of migodit kasoi, meaning we know that the concept in Shabbos is whatever the item was in Erev Shabbos, it stays like that the whole Shabbos. Unless I tore it, unless it's mamish in the dirty diapers, but as long as I can somehow maintain the same status of migodis katzoi, the way it was on Shabbos, so too, Knisa Shabbos, the entrance of Shabbos, it will stay like that the whole time. Yeah? So too, and the Gemara wants to exaggerate and show it's as bad as throwing the glima before. That's the idea. Ela Amar Rav Papa, therefore it says Rav Papa, Im zolku mibod yom la'ashpa asura, which means if you threw that shard, that piece of kli, the piece of cover, that's of course it's osur. Why? Because the Shabbos came in, it was thrown. If it was thrown into this ashpa, this semi-garbage kind of place before Shabbos came in, and as Shabbos came in, it's thrown, no question, right? And there, as Tosa says, there's no room to compare it to the glima anymore. Because whatever you did Erev Shabbos, and as Shabbos came in, it was already dochui, already rejected from my mind by being in that unpleasant side place ashpa. For sure, that's already considered out of my mind. Yeah, the shenken, if in the middle of Shabbos I did it, it doesn't it doesn't make it muktzah. Omar Baramduri, Omar Shmuel. Yeah, Baramduri says on behalf of Shmuel, Krumiyos shel machzeles. Krumiyos shel machzeles are small pieces from the rug. Imagine yourself a rug made out of many little, of like shoots, yeah, many reeds, yeah. And the krumios is either like the small pieces of machzelis, which the Ritva says are normally thrown into the garbage. The machzelis is either completely dismantled or partially dismantled, and you have like leftover small pieces who are left, or like we're shedding off from the machzelis from that kind of rug. Now the question is, those things to begin with are usually thrown to the garbage or thrown into the fire. Now, however, mutar l'taltalam b'Shabbos. Comes the Gemara and tells me you're allowed to carry them on Shabbos. My time. Why are you allowed to carry it on Shabbos? Omar Rove, Baramduri Asberli, Baramduri explained it to me. Machzeles gufa lemay chazia lechitsui be'ofro. What's the original good machzeles good for? When the machzeles is full, new, wholesome, intact, beautiful, new machzeles made in Ikea. So now that machzeles, what is it good for? To cover dirt. That's what the machzeles is for. It's a rug. So the small pieces that are shedding off it or broken away from it, as long as you can cover with them pieces of dirt, like any kind of dirt, they're also usable. They're also considered to be good. Explain the Rishonim, Toyses, Rash, Borit, for they all say the same question. From our Gemara, it sounds like that because the original usage is to cover, so too this maintains the name of a kli, and it's not a muktzah because it's used for the same purpose, for a similar purpose. That seems to be supporting Rav Yehuda. It says that you always have to maintain the original purpose in order to maintain Shem Kli. They're shining all up in arms and they say not true. Halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda in Muktzah. Halacha is like Rabbi Meir. You do not have to have the same usage, the same purpose from the new Kli, the same as the old Kli. So why over here does the Gemara stress it has to be the same? Says the Ritzvah, that's why. Because really, those things, those slivers, so unimportant, so not choshuv, one would say, why is it that they maintain the name of a Kli? Only in this case because they maintain the same usage of the original Kli. If I have a choshev piece, measures, I have a nice choshev piece of like the wooden bowl, yeah, nice, big, good quality. It broke into two. Still a nice piece, yeah, and I would cover stuff with it. Yeah, it's still nice to cover, to do some arts and crafts. It's good for something else. Yeah, so then even if it's a different purpose, it's still choshuv. But these small pieces are so unimportant for them to maintain the name of a kli. They have to do something similar to the original. Because they're less important, they need more of chashivus, of the connection to the original kli. That to compensate for that. However, Tosfos says lav dafka. Tosfos argues in the Ritva. Look at the third Tosfos. It's very short and sweet. Tosfos says zaren kichol kem ton b'chotzel. No, excuse me. Sorry. The second Tosfos. I'm sorry. The second Tosfos. Machzeles guf al ma'achazia. The Tosfos. L'Rav Chadmirsa mefurash. It's only saying this L'Rav Chadmirsa to tell you a better case. Afal gav delor ba'im melacha rishoina. Oh, we don't require the same melacha rishoina. In other words, we pass in like Rabbi Meir, not like Rabbi Yehuda, and it doesn't have to be the same halacha. We just mentioned it b'derech hagav. Rav Chadmir, to make it sound nicer, but really, according to Tosfos, as long as it's used for any usage, lav dafka the original one, it's still good. Amar b'zeh Rav, third and last case in this list. 1 second. I'm sorry for the. Oh, I'm sorry, it's shaking. Amar b'zeh Rav. Shiori pruz miois osur letaltalan b'Shabbos. Left over from the pruzma is a talis, not dafka the talis of davening. You have a garment, and you have leftover pieces, rags from the garment. So you're not allowed to carry them on Shabbos. Yeah, what does that mean? Why? In other words, we assume once your shirt tore, not going to use it. Says the Gemara, Omar Abaye, that's not always true. B'matlonios she'en ben gimel al gimel etzbo'os delo chazin lo lanim v'lo la'ashirim, which means if those pieces are less than 3 by 3 fingers, they're really small. That small, nobody will use them even as even as mops, even as shmatis, not even anim, let alone ashirim. We all know the concept which we saw in Daf Kavzayin Kavches, that when an item in halacha is less than 3 by 3 etzbos, it's not a kli anymore. And even poor people throw it in the garbage. But if the item, if the rag, whatever the piece of cloth is more than 3 by 3 etzbos, then it's considered to be a kli, a garment, a fabric, and it's not muktzah. Question is, and as I told you before, I'm going to say it again. It says lo lanim v'lo lashirim. If it's below 3, so small, even the poor people don't use it. What about if it's 3 etzbos big or bigger, but only poor people use it, but rich people, he's going to buy a new shirt tomorrow. He has 50 shirts and he has enough mops. Yeah. So what would be then? It will be muktzeh for the ashirim and not for the anim. Wow. Yeah. In other words, as we said, muktzeh is individual. If you have a muktzeh that's above 3 etzbos, but smaller than 3 tfochim we assume even rich people use. So if it's in the size of, it's good for anim would keep it, but a shirim would not, rich people would not. So for them it's muktzah, for them it's not. Interesting case, which is mentioned in the Rishonim and in the Mishnah Berurah. If you have a rich guy who lives with a poor guy, some funny kind of situation. You have a poor family and you have a rich Ben Bais. You have a rich guy who's dorming with them. Maybe he's paying him something. So then the rich guy is tougher to them. The rich guy is like secondary to them. And although normally he's rich, but because in that household, we keep even the shalosh etzbos, the small piece, even for the rich guy, it's not muktzah. That's chiddush. Weiter. Here comes the main part of the shir. And let's start with the Braisa. Shivrei Tanur Yoshon. The broken pieces of an oven. When I say an oven, picture in your mind. Yeah, let's have some guided, imagination here. The tanur, which we saw extensively in the third parak, basically is made out of cheres, made out of clay. Yeah, not only the dreidel, also the tanur is made out of clay, and it's basically conically shaped. You put it on the ground, and in most cases they would stick it to the ground with tefela, with like extra mud, extra material. They would stick it to the ground, and the tanur, and inside you stick the bread, and the fire is underneath the tanur, right? From the inside you heat it, and then the bread inside bakes. Or many times they would do, this is important, I'm not teaching you now Talmudical history and folklore, this is important. Let's say you have which was also common, they would have a pit in the ground. And in the pit, they would put fire. Yeah, the fire was in the pit. The tanner on top of the pit, right? And the fire would heat it up from the pit into the tanner, okay? And then the bread would bake. Now, there were 2 stages to the tanner. The first time you heat the tanner, the oven is how it's being made. That's how you manufacture it, because it's originally made out of clay, soft clay. You have to harden it. The second stage is you cover it. You basically you cover it. You plate it with an extra layer. And the second time you use it, that's a usage. That's called hesek rishon and hesek sheni. Hesek rishon is the first time you heat it in order to use it, in order to create it, to strengthen it. The second hesek, that's already second time. That's already when you use it as an old time tanur. Tanu Abonim. Shivrei Tanu Yoshon. The broken pieces of an old Tanu doesn't mean old from 1998. Tanu Yoshon means it's the second time you use it. It's been already in use and it's good for halacha. Meaning it's a usable, good, stable, sturdy Tanur. Says Rabbi Meir, they are as good, the broken pieces are as good as all other kelim. It's a broken piece. It broke on Shabbos, and you can do stuff with it. Says Rabbi Meir, go ahead and use it. Why bechotzer? Tosfos points out, lav davka bechotzer, because remember we said that if something can be used in the chotzer, it can also be used in Rosh Hashanah, according to Rav, according to halacha. It's usable. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ain't it only? No, says Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to, if you have a tanner that broke on Shabbos, bad luck, sorry, you can't carry it on Shabbos. It changed in the middle of Shabbos. Yeah, you can't bake with it now. and therefore you can't carry it. It's muktzah, says Rabbi Yehuda. Hey, Rabbi Yossi Mishum Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov al Shivri Tanu Yoshon. Rabbi Yossi, on behalf of Lezer ben Yaakov, was made. He testified that he saw broken pieces of Tanur. Shenitolin b'Shabbos. Yeah, the people Chachamim used to, whoever the minhag was, to carry them on Shabbos. That's a different topic. That's another topic. Kisui means if you have a cover of a tanur, you're allowed to take it on and off on Shabbos, and it doesn't need to have a handle. We will see more of it in Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow in 2 days' time. That's the last Mishnah on our parak. It says that this is Nogel halacha today also, right? In every home, you have like a cover for the sewage, right? In the kitchen sometimes, in the toilet, right? The white or whatever little plastic piece. So now you're not allowed to, I'm not Pesach halacha, but it sounds from the Gemara that if you have a cover of a bore, of a pit, it's a small pit really, you're not allowed to take it on and off. You're not allowed to use it is because it is like your bone and saucer, or looks like, or it is like. That's another question. If you have one of the kli, let's say you have a cover of a kli, so even though there's a question, a certain situation in which if you don't have a cover, that's a question in the Tanur, it looks as if you're building. In other words, when the cover has a handle, you can see it's a kli. When the cover does not have a handle, it looks as if you're building. So when it comes to Tanur, it's a machloikis. Tanur, by the way, is a very interesting kli. It's a kli that started as something disconnected, but it's almost always used when it's connected to the ground. So you have a Tanur, which is a kli, but traditionally attached to the ground. There's a machloikis whether I'm allowed to cover, non-cover without the handle, because if you don't have a handle, it looks as if you're building, and having a handle makes it look more like a kli and less like part of the house. I didn't say the whole story now, and I'm aware of it. We will discuss it much better, much later. But this is just a side point here. Here, the eidus was that the cover of the tanur can be taken on and off, even if it does not have a handle. It does not look as if you're building. But the main part of the brisa is what? Is one simple machlokes. Rabbi Meir versus Rabbi Yehuda. Broken tanur. The tanur has a piece that cannot bake anymore, but other things can be done. What is really the argument over here? Simple. Omar Abaye, same as in the Mishnah. The oisin men melocho, then oisin men melach tan kamiflagi. Great. We're talking here about a tanur that can do a broken piece of the tanur that can do a malacha. You can cover, you can scratch your back, you can do all kinds of creative things, but it cannot be served anymore to the original malacha. It's not big enough, strong enough, good enough to bake a piece of bread there, and that's the argument, and therefore it works great. The as there be the time, right? Each one follows his own reasoning in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda said that even if it can be used for anything else, not the original purpose, it's still a good kli, and it's not called nolad. It maintains the status of Shabbos ben Moshes when Shabbos came in. Excuse me. Oops, I made a mistake. Online. Rabbi Meir says no. Rabbi Meir says you shall not use it unless it is used for the same purpose. Yeah, this is a tanur, and that tanur is now the tanur was for obviously for baking. Now, what can you do with this broken piece? You cannot bake or do anything to do with baking with it. Yeah, you can scratch your back, you can cover, you can do whatever you want, but you cannot bake with it anymore. So it changed purposes in the middle of Shabbos. If the purpose was changed in the middle of Shabbos, it says a bit of bad news. It's called noilod, and noilod is muktzah, and that's bad, and you can't use it, can't move it. On Matzah Shabbos, you can re-meyached it, l'shan yichid kitzabrichi, and now make a new thing from it, make a new shimush, and then next Shabbos will be great. But so far, no. Rabbi Meir l'taimei, what did Rabbi Meir say? No. Meir says as long as it can be used for a purpose, any purpose, fine. It still maintains the original status of a kli, even though it changed in the middle of Shabbos. Very good. This could have been very nice and very easy. However, maskif lo Rove. We're in the first wide line, and Rov is asking an attack. Rav is attacking Abaye. If so, if it's really so nice and simple, why did they specifically argue about Shivrei Tanu? He makes it something fishy over here. And the Tanur Yoshon, well, what's the business? If they have a machlokes about Kalim, right? Argue about Kalim, any Kli. Why are you constricting and limiting your machlokes to Dafka Tanur? And you should know there is something in the air here because Tanur, as we'll see, has many qualities that are different to other Kalim. And if you dafka argue about Tanur, sounds like this is not the regular argument they have about all Kalim. And therefore, Elo Marove. Therefore, says Rove, and by the way, I'm just preparing you now, we're going now to divert from Muktzeh to Tumah V'Tara. Yeah? Yeah, no reason to be concerned. Moving to Tumah V'Tara, and eventually we'll see how the Rishonim explain the connection. No? But for now, we are going on a tangent, cut and move from Muktzeh to Tumah V'Tara. I want to explain something before we continue. Normally, kalim that are attached to the ground, and that's the way they're supposed to be. Anything attached to the ground, normally, I'm not saying about sinners, exceptions, normally is not Mekabel Tumah. Definitely with no sherets inside, yeah? Let's say I built something in the ground, yeah? I built like a swimming pool, I don't know, something in the ground. Mamish attached to the ground. And a sherets, dead sherets fell inside. Nothing. Mechubar lakaka and a Mekabel Tumah. A toilet seat, excuse the example, it's not enough coming for Nida. I'm not going to all the details. Ketem on a toilet seat, discuss it in Achronim. Yeah, the toilet seat is Mechubar lakaka, it's not Mekabel Tumah. Or Ksomim, yeah, all kinds of things. Only the kalim that are detached from the ground, they are Mekabel Tumah. Now, a tanur, right, is something that started off its life disconnected. They manufacture the tanur basically like a big pot. Then, as opposed to the pot, they add another layer. They coat it with another layer. They produce it detached, and then boom. Normally, in most, although not all cases, most cases attach it to the ground well, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So one would say, why is it Tanur Mekabel Tuma? That's a very good question. But you know what? The Gemara does, excuse me, the Torah says in Parshas Shmini that it does. That's why. It says Mefurish, Tanu v'kiraim yutatz. It says that if a dead sheretz falls into your Tanu, specifically Tanu made out of cheres, then it becomes Tomeh. Why? Why is a good question? Because that's what Hashem decided, that that's an exception to the rule. Okay, that's Pashtus, yeah? Therefore, Tanu is Mekabel Tuma. That's something we have to know. Now, another point is we have to know before we continue. The more we know now, the more the flow will go better. This is something I wonder if you knew about it. I never knew about it, and I always show off my Hebrew, but apparently this was new for me when I learned it first time. There's a difference between lishbo and lenatetz. We think lenatetz means to throw to break stronger, to smithereens, right? To small pieces. Apparently, lenatetz in the real Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh, lenatetz means to break something that's attached to the ground. Right? I didn't know that. But that's, you know it. Okay, it's a big Talmud Chochem, my neighbor, Baruch Hashem. So, no, you didn't know. You didn't know. Okay, you're not telling me. The kids are apparently, lishboil is to break something as a kli. Lenatetz, like Mizbechoseim, it says, lenatetz is to break something attached to the ground. And the Torah says about the tanu v'kiraim yutatz. You shall break in a nitutz way, break the tanur, which already tells me you break the attached tanur because it's tameh. You're not mechuyev, by the way, as Rashi says there. You want to have a tanur that's tameh, it's fine. But if you want to maintain tahara, you want to have everything tahara in your house, and if you chaver eat everything but tahara, then tanur v'kiran yutatz, which means the Torah is already telling me that although the tanur is attached to the ground, and therefore nititza applies to it, it's still mekabel tuma. Okay? So far, so easy and so good. Yeah? Questions? Good. I mean, questions on pshat we don't have. Now let's see. Now let's see what this has to do with Machloikis of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The son of pi abo oil pi hadus. Let's say you placed your tanur. I did not bring pictures today, but it's not. Oh, you don't need much imagination. Imagine yourself. Oh, look. This is a tanur. I'll even show to our viewers online. Yeah, very nice. Oh, beautiful. Art school doing an amazing job. This is the tanu. It's an upside down conically thing made out of chairs, and this is the pit. Inside the pit you have fire, and you put the tanner on top of the pit, yeah, in order for the fire to heat what's inside. The bread is here, yeah, the fire is here. The fire goes from the pit, right, into the tanner that's on top of it in order to bake what's inside. So nice, so good. before the bread in order to make the tanur. By the way, remember there are two types, right? To create the tanur, you need heat, and heat comes from inside the pit, which is underground, sometimes above ground, but it's still a pit. It's attached to the ground into the tanur that's here. Very nice. So now, Nisana, thank you. Nisana al pia bo, al pia dus. Bo is in the karka, dus is in the in a building. V'nosan sham even. Oh, look at that. It's not a perfect shidduch. Look, the size of the tanur and the pit are not really. They're not. No, they're not well coordinated. They don't fit, and you need to put a little stone to support it. Yeah, so it doesn't fall. Whatever. There's some kind of gap between the tanur and the pit, and the fire from inside is kind of going to the side, and it's getting lost. Not all the fire, the heat from here goes into here, right? If you really want to make it well, it has to be perfectly fitting, but it's not. That's the size of the tanner, that's the size of it, made by maybe a cousin of ours. I don't know. You know what I mean? And now inside you need to put an oven, so not everything, the heat is not going properly from the bottom to the top. So then what? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda. This is the same Rabbi Yehuda as before. If the heat is good enough that if you heat the lamata, you put fire inside, you ignite fire in the pit, and it goes up, and it really manages to heat the tanur on top, then it's tome. In other words, not too much heat is getting lost in that gap, the hole in the corner. The imlav toho. Oh, that's Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Yehuda, if the heat in the tanur, in the inside, in the bottom pit, is not concentrated and good enough to go into the tanur because the gap is too much. This yeah, the gap is big and the heat is really getting lost. And in order to get the tanur right, you need more heat. The heat in the tanur is not sufficient. Tohor, it's not mikabel tuma. Why? Because it's not called yutatz, which means, funnily enough, the Torah is telling you only when it's properly attached to the ground in a way that what's inside the ground is affecting the top, only then it's considered a tanur that's considered as utatzable, nitutzable, appropriate for netitza, and then it's tomeh. But if the heat on the bottom doesn't do the job, and you need, says Rashi, more heat from the inside, you need heat from exterior source to make the tanur on top, it's tahor. Yeah, only a tanur that gets its heat from the ground is a tanur that deserves to have the name tanur and receive tuma, because that's really yutatz. That's what the Torah is telling me here. The Chachamim say no. Chachamim say we don't care. Chachamim oimrim hoil v'husak mikol makom tomeh. No, Chachamim say attached to the ground, and as long as it's husak, as long as it's getting hot, and by the way, this is the first heating makes it a tanur. As long as it became a tanur, it's a tanur. Even if the heat did not come exclusively from the bottom of the pit, and yes, a lot of heat got lost in the corner there, it's still considered as a tanur, even though it's not so well attached to the ground and does not receive its heat that made it from the ground. We don't care. What's the source of argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, whether it's so important to have the source of heat from inside the ground or not? This is a pasuk which I told you about before. Pasuk here in Vayikra Yud Aleph, Tanur v'kiraim yutatz. It says, Tanur v'kiraim shall be broken as an attached to the ground kli yutatz, being attached to the ground. However, it says tmeim hem utmeim yulochem. Oh, if the Torah says twice tmeim, it's coming to include something. It's coming to tell you more than the minimum. Let's see how the Bryce explains it. Rabbi Yehuda Sovar, it's actually the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda says mechus on the netitza tomeh, and mechus on the netitza to. Simple. Rabbi Yehuda says, listen, I'm looking at the first part of the pasuk, right? The first part of the pasuk did not say yishover, it says yinotetz, yutatz, which means it has to be attached to the ground. I'm sorry, if this tanur is so disjointed, so not overlapping properly, not fitting the ground to the level that what's inside the ground is not affecting it, That's not called a good shidduch with the ground. No good shidduch with the ground. That's not called netitza in my book, and therefore it's tar. It's not a tanur that's considered a tanur. Tanur has to be attached to the ground to get the tumah. Otherwise, no. Rabbanon savri, tzmeim yulochem mikol makom. Rabbanon say that's a very nice idea what you're saying, but why did the Torah repeat the same word twice? Tmeim hen v'tmeim yulochem. That's a heck of a lot of words for the Torah. So why does the Torah repeat the word tmeim twice? You know why? It's coming to tell you to include mikol makom, which means although the Torah at the beginning required it should be yutat and attached to the ground, which means it's more exclusive, and it's telling you, listen carefully, that some tanurim are not tomeh, but then the end of the pasuk is saying tomeh twice, to include that even the tanur that's not so attached to the ground, even that tanur is also tomeh. It's kilo including more cases under the Tumah umbrella. Of course, now we're going to ask what each Tana does with the other part of the pasuk. But so far, let's just pause for a second and summarize just for now. Rabbi Yehuda is kilo only looking at the first part of the pasuk. Yutatz. Yeah, yutatz means it has to be really part of the ground. If it's so such a bad shidduch, it's there's a stone, all the air is coming out, the heat, you need another source of heat. That's not called being part of the ground. Yeah, you're getting your construction from other places. That's not yutat. What about the second part of the pasuk? We'll deal with that later. Chachamim only look at the second part of the pasuk and they say, no, you're very nice what you're saying, Rabbi Yehuda, but the fact that Torah repeats tmeim twice is coming to tell you that precisely that. Whether the tanur completely gets its source or the tanur does not really get its source from the ground, it's still tomeh. Yeah, which is being wider, more expensive, more inclusive, more cases are tomeh. Of course, now, Kederech Gemara, we're going to see how each Tana relates to the other part of the pasuk. Rabbanon, it's very nice looking the second part of the pasuk, but the pasuk does say yutats, right? Sounds like it's required to be part of the ground, and it's not part of the ground if the heat doesn't come from there. The heat is what makes the tanur. It's not a side thing. Answers the Rabbanon, obviously a very goynish, a simple answer. Hahula idach gisa. What? That's coming to teach me the other way. It's coming to teach me the other way. The salkadai tachamina. I would have thought. Remember what I told you at the beginning, guys. I would have thought Kevin the chaber be'arek igufa the aradami kamash malan. Chachamim say goynish. What? You telling me that a tanner has to be attached to the ground? What? Idach gisa the other way. I told you that most things that are mechuber lekarka, be it the toilet seat or bathtub, or whatever that is, or a pillar, they're not mekabel tuma. The Torah had to tell me that although, not because, although it's mechuber lekarka, which is a disadvantage, most things mechuber lekarka are not mekabel tuma. Although it's mechuber lekarka, it's still mekabel tuma. You're completely on the wrong direction, Rabbi Yehuda, they say, right? Although it's mechuber lekarka, it's still mekabel tuma because most things are not. Tanur is the glaring, shining exception to the rule that although it's mechuber lekarka, it's still mekabel tuma. It's not a requirement. It's in spite of it. It's not because of it. And now we're saying yes. And even if it's not so well attached to the ground, of course it's mekabel tuma. Yeah, very good. Oh, very good. Very, very good. I like your question. If so, clearly, very nice. Beautiful. The answer is as follows, because I wanted to say at the beginning, thank you. He always reminds me, thank you. And that is what's his name? Tanur has another disadvantage. Poor Tanur. When it's detached from the ground, it has no receptacle, right? The top is hollow, and the bottom is also hollow, right? You'll attach it eventually, right? Imagine yourself something that is no. So how it wouldn't be mekabel tuma? Because kli cheres there is no. Kli kibul is not mekabel tuma normally, except for tanur. No, it's not. Kli cheres mekabel tuma mitoicho. There's no toich. So that's also chidush. That's we need both chidushim. Both when it's attached and detached. Thank you. We need double sav. Shkoyach. Kli cheres. Yeah, this tanur is a real poor kid. He really needs a lot of special attention. Like many of us. In other words, because it's detached, it's not a normal kli. So we need tome, right? And when it's attached, it also needs a pasuk because it's attached to the ground. Now that's a chiddush. Very nice. Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're attacking Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, it does say tmeim. You're right, Rabbi Yehuda. It says yutat. It sounds very narrow. Only when it's attached to the ground and receiving its koach from there, it's tumah. But the pasuk does include something, right? The pasuk is including more cases. What is it coming to include according to you? Answers the Gemara. I'll tell you what it's coming to include. And we'll finish after that statement. I was careful to tell you throughout, and I wasn't sure, but I'm happy to see. The only machlokes between Chacham and Rabbi Yehuda is the hesek rishon, meaning what's hesek rishon? When it's becoming a tanur, when you're creating, manufacturing the tanur, then they argue. Aval basic sheni. Let's say the tanur is already strong, sturdy, well-made tanur, the top of the bite in I don't know Rafaeli, yeah. Hesek sheni afilu toli b'tzvar gomol. Wow, that's the chiddush. A hesek sheni, yeah. When the hesek sheni, which means once it's already called a tanur, it doesn't need the ground to be manufactured, to be created. It's already a star in its own right. Then even if it's a very funny kivyochel example, even if it's hanging from the neck of a camel, it doesn't mean that the camel is burning. It means even if that tanur is a mobile tanur, a guy backpacking through, going to a kumzit. So even if the tanur is completely detached from the ground, you hang it, and you somehow manage to get it heated and baked, then we say that it is mekabel tumah. Yeah, let's say it was mekabel tumah, although it's being detached now, it's mekabel tumah, even according to who? To Rabbi Yehuda. To Rabbi Yehuda, and that's what the extra word Tom is telling me. Yeah, that the requirement to be in the ground is only first time, not second time. The second time we say because of the extra tameh, that then everything goes, and then even if it's detached, it's mekabel tumah. Omer Ula, hesek rishon l'rabbanon lefilu tol b'tzvar goma. Ula just pointing out that the hesek rishon, according to Chachamim, when Chachamim say it doesn't have to be attached to the ground, they don't mean to say partially attached, even if it's completely detached. Yeah, let's say you heated fire over here. Yeah, and the first time you're creating the tanur is hanging, and there's gap of air in between. It's still mekabel tumah. Chachamim don't care about being attached to the ground. What does it say? Yutat? Forget it. Even if it's connected to the ground, it's good. Completely afuch. Maski for Ravashi. Ravashi is attacking. They have to be here tomorrow night to hear the attack. Attack tomorrow night. Not from Yemen, not from Saudi, not from Iran. Attack of the Gemara. If we learn the attacks of the Gemara well, we'll not be attacked by the Arabs. That's the way to go, right? That's it. Say to everybody there, yes. We should all project this idea to ourselves and to others. Hatzlacha bracha. Thank you very, very much to everybody. Thank you to Ma'am Loez for being such amazing host. Thank you for Torah Anytime, and to our YouTube viewers. Gute Woche. May we see the light of Chanukah already now and later. Chanukah schedule to be announced, probably day by day. Okay, call to Hatzlacha.